Perhaps the biggest bombshell, investigators say they found no incriminating client list of Epstein's.
No evidence that Epstein kept a client list of associates who he blackmailed or conspired with.
And no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties.
No, there's no list. There's no list of people getting massages. I can barely recall all the people.
I don't know where they are. I am the daughter of a press baron. I know the way you people think. If you do one side, you must do the other. If you get the tapes on Trump, you have to do Clinton.
This is what Ghislaine Maxwell said in an interview on CBS's 60 Minutes. It was 9 years ago, right before the elections, which made Trump the president for the very first time, but the interview never aired. Now that definitely makes those statements lose value and remain lost in the desert of hundreds of other allegations made against Trump or, for that matter, Clinton. However, one undeniable fact is that video footage holds much more dignity than written statements. If we had actual footage of Maxwell saying those statements, which I am pretty sure CBS might have in its database, it would be much more trustworthy. Same way, the tapes that exist based on these supposed statements by Maxwell would be much more reliable than the names in the list. It's a matter of concern, isn't it? At least for Donald Trump. His name occurred in the released or leaked Epstein Files, which were also encircled. The encircled names meant they allegedly had a hand in Epstein's trafficking ring. We know at least for now that Trump was allegedly involved, but the tapes would be a step above that. These tapes are not just any other tapes of Trump hanging around with Epstein at a party. These are much more. Maxwell's interviewer, Ira Rosen, had acted on a hunch that the tapes existed, and specifically asked her for tapes of Trump with the girls. I want the tapes. I know he, Epstein, was videotaping everyone, and I want the tapes of Trump with the girls. Maxwell didn't deny their existence and simply said she doesn't know where Epstein keeps them. And when Rosen insisted upon seeing the tapes, "Ask Epstein," he said, adding that the fate of the country is at stake. Trump could be elected president. And how would you feel if those tapes emerged after he was in office? Rosen asked Maxwell. This is when Maxwell openly admitted that the tapes of Trump and even Clinton did exist. She gave a stern look and pointed a finger at Rosen, saying, "I am the daughter of a press baron. I know the way you people think. If you do one side, you must do the other. If you get the tapes on Trump, you have to do Clinton." But again, as I said, where is the footage of Maxwell saying any of those statements? These statements were taken from the 2021 book Ticking Clock, Behind the Scenes at 60 Minutes, by Ira Rosen. Rosen was the CBS producer from 2002 to 2019 and wrote about his various encounters during the famous 60 Minutes show in his book. One of these encounters was with Ghislaine Maxwell. It was early 2016. And Maxwell herself called upon Rosen to give him an interview for 60 Minutes. He went to meet Maxwell, and they started doing the interview, but Maxwell insisted on having control over the editing, and Rosen refused, so the interview never aired. And when the interview never aired, all these statements might just be fake news, made to tarnish Trump's image, just like the allegations made by Jeannie Carroll
of raping her in a Manhattan apartment store back in the mid-1990s.
The hush money trial.
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
Or the papers at Mar-a-Lago, among many other things. However, if you pay attention and go by what was written in the book, it can't be Rosen who wanted to make the allegations on Trump, since taking this interview wasn't even on his mind, and it was Maxwell who called for the interview first. And even if we assume that Rosen wanted to target Trump, Maxwell surely can't want to do the same. Because when Rosen doubles down on his question of wanting to know where the tapes involving the girls and Trump are, Maxwell insisted to Rosen that Rosen also cover the tapes of Clinton. Why would Maxwell drag Clinton's name if she wanted to target Trump? Or maybe she wanted something else entirely, since Trump was running for president, and opposite him was none other than Hillary Clinton. Maybe she wanted to send the message to both sides. The more you look into these statements made by Maxwell and the context behind them, the more believable they sound. It's like the sum of its parts is greater than the whole. The statements in themselves don't stand on too much ground, but if I start analyzing their context, it's hard not to believe in them. Firstly, come the tapes. The tapes do exist. Epstein had a lot of them stored in cupboards in his Manhattan mansion and whatnot. Terabytes of footage are all under the FBI's control right now. However, were these tapes just CP downloaded from the internet? Or were they just footage of his own recordings doing various stuff? Or was Epstein making footage of other people? Because you know what, if Epstein simply recorded his own wrongdoings or downloaded files from the internet, which would be strange since he himself ran a whole trafficking ring, why would he need to download videos from the internet? But even if he did, none of these recordings necessitate the need for a specialized control room with live video screens. That's what Mara Farmer, one of Epstein's victims, said she saw at his New Mexico ranch. Virginia Giuffre, another Epstein victim who passed away in mysterious suicide earlier this year, also claimed that Maxwell showed her hidden cameras, some disguised as smoke detectors, some in shower heads, and warned that staff could see them via remote feeds. So Epstein definitely recorded not just himself, but other people as well. But what could be the reason behind recording others? I mean, blackmailing is a simple one, but there is a much more added context to it, and the hint of those contexts is in Maxwell's very statements. In Maxwell's statements, she mentions her father being a press baron, but her father was much more than that. Robert Maxwell was known to have been a secret agent, but not just for a single agency. He worked for Mossad, MI6, and the KGB, often acting as the communication channels between each of them during the Soviet era. Maxwell's name even appears in the Promise hack, which created a secret backdoor in the Department of Justice's database, stealing thousands of important documents, and in short, he was a man of interest. Ghislaine Maxwell met with Epstein around the same period her father mysteriously died, after falling off his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, in the Atlantic Ocean. Robert Maxwell had taken numerous loans in the name of his one well-run company, but after his death, the banks came to investigate and found that he had embezzled more than $400 million in his other failing businesses. So, by the time Epstein met Ghislaine, Epstein was richer than her, but she had the resources, connections, and the power. Donald Trump, too, was known to have partied on the Lady Ghislaine in the late 80s, before Ghislaine even met Epstein. These times of the late 80s and early to mid-90s are also the time when Trump really came into contact with the Russian oligarchs, mafia, diplomats, and eventually the KGB. The circles all these three people, that is Trump, Ghislaine, and Epstein, hung out in was not just any other rich, affluent celebrity people's club. There were politicians, then the businessmen who were secretly in the mafia, and then the mafia secretly connected to the secret agencies like the KGB, CIA, Mossad, and the MI6. Even when Epstein was first caught, the prosecutor Alexander Acosta handling his case was told by higher-ups that Epstein was a man of intelligence and way above his pay grade. Now that just might be due to Epstein's involvement with the FBI in solving the Bear Stearns case after the 2008 crash. Anyways, that just proves that the FBI was complicit in Epstein's trafficking ring and let him off the hook as long as he proved to be helpful in the Bear Stearns case. But let's be honest here, the 2008 crash, though extremely impactful, wasn't the sole responsibility of Bear Stearns, where Epstein worked, and the sole case of Bear Stearns, where Epstein could have been helpful to the FBI, wasn't big enough to be complicit in the case of one of the most notorious human trafficking rings ever discovered in the history of the United States. Maybe, just like Robert Maxwell, Epstein was a man of interest. The secret agencies are part of their respective governments. They have some guardrails to act in their legal sphere, which tie their hands in many cases. This is when they make use of organizations like Blackwater, White Knight, and the Men of Interest. There are two kinds of men of interest, people like Donald Trump who are used as investments with a potential for huge returns in the future. They are spoon-fed with connections, opportunities, money, and the fulfillment of desires.
Well, first of all, I want to distinguish between an asset and an agent. And an agent is someone who knows he has signed on with the KGB. He can be given specific tasks. He's actually paid by them. The KGB made a point of cultivating powerful businessman. I'm thinking of Armand Hammer, who goes back to the days of Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin. And he was an enormously wealthy American oil man who was very much an asset. And he was sort of aging out when the KGB began cultivating Trump.
The spoon feeding is mostly outsourced to the other kind of men of interest, the ones like Robert Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein. People like Epstein act as middlemen, helping to launder money, provide investment, connections, and information on powerful entities. One of the many ways individuals like Epstein operate is by connecting people like Trump to secret agencies. However, Epstein wasn't the specific guy who connected Trump to the likes of the KGB. Matter of fact, the specific sphere Epstein worked in wasn't exactly of the solicitation of powerful people to the secret agencies. Rather, he worked in the sphere of honey trap. Epstein himself was definitely complicit, but his entire trafficking ring was much bigger than his own desires. There is evidence of the illegal books that he possessed on how to blackmail and surveil people. Literally, victims coming out saying he had an entire control room for surveillance. He had proven connections in the CIA and Mossad at least. I guess that proves why Alexander Acosta was told that Epstein was above his pay grade, and why Ghislaine admitted that he kept tapes of Trump and Clinton. Strangely, Epstein died during Trump's first presidency, only a year after Epstein himself claimed that he had dirt on powerful people. Strange, isn't it? Also, if you like this video, check out my other videos. They are quite similar in style and substance, and do make sure to share and subscribe.